Hi, this is Dorian from Property Sensei, and today we are going to talk about Pinery Residences at Tampines West. What is the expected selling price, whether the prices are justifiable, and if the project is worth buying. And today I have with us Kang
Hello, everyone.
and Ivan.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, so Kang, let's start with you first. What do you think Pinery Residences prices is going to be like?
Okay, so Pinery is in a mature part of Tampines. Okay, it's linked to the Tampines West MRT, has its own shopping mall, as is within 1 kilometer of St. Hilda's. I think pricing wise, the developer will price it very, very similar to the Parktown prices last year.
I think Pinery should be from around 2,300 PSF. Maybe high floor going up to 2,500, 2,700 PSF, which is same as Parktown. This is pretty good since Pinery shares similar attributes to Parktown, but it's actually better.
Okay. Besides talking about Parktown, let me be the devil's advocate over here. Some buyers may be thinking if Pinery is overpriced because in the area we have Treasures at Tampines, which is cheaper. So why don't they buy Treasures at Tampines instead?
Okay, so maybe let me ask both of you this question. Do you know what is the PSF at Treasures right now?
Probably around 1,800 PSF.
Yeah, I would say it's about that same range.
Okay, so Treasures is transacting at 1,800 XXPSF on average. So both of you are quite accurate. Okay, so in my opinion, right? Okay, the fact that Treasures is selling at 1,800 XXPSF actually strengthened the case for Pinery. Okay, when Pinery is selling at 2,003.
So how do you come up with that conclusion?
Okay, so people will be curious, right? Why buy Pinery at 2003 when you can buy Treasures at 18XX? Okay, this is because you can't compare these two projects directly. Okay, so I have to use a method called building a sandwich. Okay, before I can compare these two projects apple to apple.
Wow, building a sandwich. You mean this is a new theory?
Okay, it's not a new theory. Okay, it's actually a small exercise, okay, that I use before I can compare the two projects. Okay, so as an analogy, right, you can envision Pinery to be this big juicy sandwich. Okay, it has a big juicy patty, okay, with tomatoes, lettuce, and a lot of sauce. Okay, whereas Treasures is very basic. Okay, it's like 2 pieces of bread. You are not going to pay the same for these two, isn't it? So there must definitely be a price difference. So how do you reconcile all these differences and arrive at the expected price difference? Okay, so you have to consider all these factors one by one.
So it's like having a base and then after that having some add-ons to like complete the meal.
Okay, exactly. Okay, this is right. Okay, so the first factor that we are looking at, and that's the most obvious factor, right, is the MRT effect. Okay, so Pinery is linked to the MRT. It has its own shopping mall, whereas Treasures is 20 minutes away from the MRT. So to use as a comparison, okay, we can use Trevor and Woodleigh Residences. Okay, so Trevor is about 7 minutes away from MRT, whereas Woodleigh Residences is also linked to the mall and the MRT. Okay, and there's actually a 23% difference in their pricing. Okay, if we look at a separate example in Yishun, okay, North Park Residences versus Symphony Suites. Okay, Symphony Suites is very similar to Treasures in the sense that it's also about 20 minutes away from the MRT. So Treasures is 20 minutes away from the MRT as well. And the difference between North Park and Symphony Suites price is actually 38% difference.
So those are good examples that you gave. For example, like Trevor and Woodleigh Residences, because they are in the same location of the same age. So basically you eliminate all the other factors except the proximity to MRT.
Yes, that's very sharp of you. Okay, so this is what we are trying to do to be a bit more scientific. Okay, because using the scientific approach, you try to keep everything the same and you just have one variable. Okay, so the first variable is actually the MRT. The second variable, right, is actually the tenure or actually the age gap. Okay, so when, so Treasures TOP in 2023. Okay, so when Pinery TOP, right, there will actually be a 6 to 7 years age gap between these two projects. Okay, and as we guys know and discussed numerous times, okay, a difference in the age gap equals to a difference in the pricing. Every year is about 2 to 3% difference. Okay, so if we use an example in the same location, okay, in Buangkok, which is Jewel at Buangkok versus Quartz, okay, they actually have a 7 years age gap as well. Okay, and with this 7 years age gap, there's actually a 15% price difference. So this is our second variable.
So the 7-8 years age gap is actually going to be similar to Treasures at Tampines and Pinery, because we will be expecting around a 6 to 7 years age gap between them as well.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about you have other factors to include in?
Okay, the third variable, let's not forget, okay, is that Treasures at Tampines is pre-harmonized, whereas Pinery is post-harmonized. Okay, so there's the AC latch for Pinery is not taken into consideration when we look at the floor plan. Okay, so typically there's a 6% difference in terms of the PSF. Okay, so the third effect is the harmonization effect, which is about 6%. Okay, so if we take the base price, okay, of Treasures at Tampines at 1,008, okay, to be conservative. Okay, for the MRT effect, we are not going to take 38%. We are not even going to take 23%. We are just going to be conservative and take 20%. Okay, for the tenure gap or the age gap, we are going to use 15%. Okay, and the harmonization factor, we are going to use 6%. So putting all these things in place, okay, if we multiply 1,008 by 1.2 and 1.15 and 1.06, we are going to arrive at 26xx. Okay, which is the expected price for Pinery.
Okay. So you are saying that this is like adding the patty, the tomatoes, and the lettuce into the sandwich?
Exactly. Okay. Only by accounting for all these factors, okay, then you have an apple to apple comparison. Okay, so this is just a very small exercise. I'm not saying that Pinery should be selling at 2006. Okay, but this is just a very small exercise so that you can reconcile the differences and compare these two projects fairly. And I think this will make it a more fair comparison.
Okay, but in fact, I feel that I think that there is another factor which has not been included in as well, which is the St. Hilda's effect, because we all know that a good school brings about more demand as well.
Exactly. Okay, so by not even trying to account for St. Hilda's, right? Okay, we already arrived at 2006. Okay, this is because the data for the school effect is less well defined. Okay, however, based on newspaper article, they estimate about a 15% effect. Okay, so if we want to be aggressive and factor in this 15%, we actually arrive at about 3,000 PSF for Pinery.
Wow, 很夸张耶.
Yes, it's pretty 夸张. Okay, so I'm not saying that Pinery should sell at 3,000 PSF. Okay, hopefully the developers are not listening to this. But what I'm trying to say is that Treasures and Pinery are very different and should not be compared easily like this. Okay, if you factor in all these different factors, okay, Pinery is actually very worth it. Okay, at just a slight increase from the 1,008xx that you see at Treasures.
Another project that I would like to bring in to compare would be Pasir Ris Gate. Pasir Ris Gate, being about 4 to 5 years older, is already transacting at around 2,100 PSF, which is around 2,300 PSF when you adjust to post-harmonize.
Yes, okay, so Pasir Ris is a very obvious example. Another very obvious example is actually Lentor Modern. Okay, so Lentor Modern is also linked to the MRT. Okay, it also has its own shopping mall and it's newly TOP. Okay, so it's already transacting at close to 2,500 PSF, and if you adjust for harmonization, it's about 2,600 PSF. Okay, so as we know, every year age gap, there's about a $50 or 2 to 3% price difference. Okay, so looking at Pasir Ris 8 and looking at Lentor Modern, it actually strengthens Pinery case. And last thing, not to forget, okay, let's say you decide not to go for Pinery. Okay, what else you can go for in the future? Do you know that the next plot of land that is linked to the MRT or near to the MRT in the east is actually Bedok Rise? And the land is actually sold at 1,330. Okay, so the land cost alone, right, is more than $300 higher than Pinery. Okay, so if the developer wants to make the same profit margin or not lose money, right, you have to sell 300 PSF higher than Pinery.
Okay. And not to forget that actually, Parktown already transacted at 2006 PSF. So which means that that is already the acceptable market price in that area. So which I feel that it means that Pinery's prices will not need too much justification. And not to forget as well that this is a good project that is linked to the MRT, has its own shopping mall and within 1 kilometer from St. Hilda's. So this is definitely a project to look out for. And with this, we have come to the end of our video. See you guys in the next episode.
See you guys.